Now, I did tell you that last night I saw something very interesting, the Eiffel Tower, and it was very interesting and beautiful as well. But I saw something else interesting that was just amazing to me about an hour ago, and it was a river lock. We went through a river lock, and the Seine River apparently is full of them. I never knew that. And the one we went through, the gates open outward, they're hinged outward, and you can see the watermarks on the wall from the water being raised and lowered. It was very interesting. I saw water coming in from the sides, but that's a river lock. And not to be confused with a lock like you would find at the Maui escape rooms. This is a river lock. So, to avoid confusion between the locks, what is a river lock? Well, I'll tell you. A river lock is a device used for raising and lowering a river or canal's water level for watercraft, where stretches of the water are at different levels. Now, let me try to explain a little better. A river lock is a fixed chamber in which the water level can be varied while a vessel is floating on it. Now, they're like elevators that makes a river easier to navigate or allows a canal to cross land that is not level. And when I talk about watercraft or vessels, I'm referring to boats and ships. Confused yet? I know I am. Now, there are different types of locks. There are pound locks, caisson locks, guillotine locks, and special locks built for steep inclines, such as staircase locks and flights, to name a few. But they all do the same thing: raise and lower watercraft. They've been around for centuries, and we all know 1 century by itself is 100 years, so we're talking way back to ancient times. Back then, river transport was common, but rivers were often too shallow for large boats, so only smaller boats traveled on them. Now, ancient people discovered that rivers could be made to carry larger boats by making dams to raise the water level. Now, the water behind the dam would deepen until it spilled over the top, which created a weir. And this process is similar to the weirs you find at the Damariscotta fish ladder. There, the water flows downward, filling up each pool behind the dam wall. Then it overflows over the top of the dam into the pool below, and it fills up that pool, and it overflows that dam wall. And this same principle applies to what they built in ancient times. As the dams they built filled up with water, and the water got deeper, it became deep enough to carry larger boats. The boats would pass over the weirs and slide into the pool below it. The wall on the other side of the dam wall was slanted downward so the boat could slide down into the pool. This dam building was repeated along the river, creating steps of deep water, similar to the steps or pools that we've seen at the Damariscotta fish ladder. Well, we're not quite to the next lock yet, so let's talk about different types of locks, and we'll start with the pound lock, which is a type of lock we're about to go through. Pound locks were first used in medieval China during the Song Dynasty, and that was 960 to 1279 AD. It's a pair of gates that traps water within it, and that trapped water is called a pound. When going upriver, you drain river out of the pound so it matches the river water level on the other side of the lower gate. When matched, you raise the lower gate and a watercraft enters the pound. The lower gate closes and the pound is filled with water to match the water level of the river on the other side of the upper gate. When matched, the upper gate will open and the watercraft continues down the river on the other side. So what happens if you have a steep incline? Well, then you have staircase locks, which I used. And there are 2 types of staircase locks: real and apparent. Now stay with me because this can get a little confusing, because they're both staircase locks, and anyway. Alright, so a real staircase lock is where the intermediate pounds have disappeared, and the upper gate of one lock is also the lower gate of the one above it. It can be more useful to think of a staircase as a single lock with a chamber that can only be filled by emptying the one above or emptied by filling the one below. Thus, a whole staircase has to be full of water except for the bottom chamber before a boat starts to ascend, or empty before a boat starts to descend. An apparent staircase is where you still have the common gates between all the different sections. I don't know, let's say 4 or 5 single pounds within the outer left and the outer right, or the outer upper and the outer lower gates. This means it is not necessary to ensure that the flight is full or empty before starting. Now there's another lock I like to talk about. It's called the caisson lock, and it's not for the claustrophobic or faint of heart, that's for sure. It was introduced in England around 1800 to be used in their Somerset coal canal. It was an underwater lift with a chamber 80 feet long and 60 feet deep. It contained a completely enclosed wooden box big enough to take a large boat or barge, and that box is called a caisson. This box moved up and down in the 60 feet deep pool of water. The boat entered the box and was sealed in by the door closing behind it. The box was then moved up and down in the water using 2 hydraulic lifts. When it got to the bottom of the chamber, the door opened and it left. Now, when it was at the bottom of the chamber, I'd like it to know that that box was under almost 60 feet of water and a lot of pressure. Fortunately, the caisson lock had various engineering problems, of which leaking was one of them, imagine that, and the design was never put into use. The big difference between a regular lock and a caisson lock is that the regular lock is a fixed chamber in which the water level can be varied, up and down. But a caisson lock, also called a boat lift, is that the chamber itself rises and falls. Which brings me to the guillotine lock. Now this lock has vertically moving steel gates at each end, which means up and down. The gates open upward to release water and downward to seal the chamber. And that makes it watertight, so the chamber can fill back with water. When one of these gates is open, it looks like a guillotine. And look, all that talking and we've entered a lock. This lock has gates that go up and down into and out of the water, as opposed to opening from side to side, which was like the lock I went through earlier. It usually takes around 20 minutes to fill up a pound, so they're going to have to speed this up a mite. We've got to get out of here. Got things to do, places to go. There goes the gate. It's getting lower. It's going, gone. Great. We'll get a green light and we'll be able to leave. And I got to get back to the world of the magical couch. Because you know what they say? When the sheriff's away, the bad guys play. And one can only imagine what's going on while I'm not there.